sending that out. All right. We've worked with a lot of experienced fundraisers over the years. And the primary concern is that they don't have enough contacts. But once we get connected with them, we usually discover you have a whole list of contacts that you haven't even thought of intentionally maximizing. And that list is your newsletter list. I'm actually going to need to do something technical really quick to Drew, I just made you a co-host. So could you run the polls for me?
Sure.
Okay. Do you know how to do that? There should be a poll button down at the bottom. Is there one? We might have to skip polls if you don't see it, because I don't see it on my iPad.
Yep, I got it.
Okay, cool. Let's throw that first poll up there. How many people are on your current newsletter list? We have 100 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to 750, and over 750. So pick one of those. I'm really interested to see what these numbers reveal. Let's hear from everyone. So just select one really quick. $100, $250, $500, over $750. You can close that out, Drew, once most everybody is. And let's share the results with me. Or just hit share the results. Okay, so most everyone has, we have half have between 100 and 250, and half have 250 to 500. We have a few people that have between 500 and 750, and no one over 750. So with that list of names in mind, think about how many of them are currently financial partners. You know, typically when we ask this question, you might identify 20 to 40 people from that list who are current financial partners. And if that's the case for you, that means we've automatically identified dozens of people that you could talk to about a financial partnership. If not, for some of you, hundreds of people. And this is such a great group to start with. These people are already connected to the ministry, and they've shown interest in hearing about what's going on in the ministry. So that's where we want to start. And we want to actually segment the names on your newsletter list into 4 groups, okay? And this will help you, segmenting will actually help you make a plan that will work for each group. So let's take a look at the first group, segment A. Segment A is your current partners. These are the people that we already know are interested in a financial partnership, but we can invite them to do more. We know they're interested in financial partnership because they are financially partnering. The first thing we can invite them to do is to actually consider increasing their giving. If someone has partnered with you for at least a year, it's perfectly acceptable to show them your gratitude for their partnership and ask them to consider increasing for the coming year. We have actually a resource on how to do that you can, it's an ebook on how to do that, and it's at more.tailoredfundraising.com. Emily, if you'll throw that in the chat, but it's an ebook that you can download and gives you more specifics about how to invite people to increase their giving. Another way they can help is by connecting you with their friends and family. So a great way to do this is by hosting a get-together, but not everyone is cut out to be a host. So even a simple introduction through email can be helpful. You know, this doesn't have to be a large group. It can be 1 or 2 people, but make sure that the person who's, you know, introducing you understands that this is not about, it's not about the number of people, but it's the level of interest. We want a really high level of interest. So we'd much rather have 1 very interested person than 10 people who just showed up to be warm bodies at this get together, you know? So that's really important. Segment B is the people who have given in the past, either one time or ongoing. This is a great group to connect with because they've already shown some interest in a financial investment at some point. And the greatest indicator of someone's inclination to give is if they've given in the past. So some may not have been aware that they could partner monthly, so they gave a one-time gift, whereas others who did partner may have stopped giving. Maybe their card declined because they have an error, or they were simply never followed up with. Um, or maybe life got difficult for them, their circumstances changed, and they had to stop their partnership. But as those times passed, those circumstances may have changed as well. So you may want to engage again. Whatever the situation, it could be a good time to check back and invite them to consider an ongoing monthly or annual partnership. Segment C, the third segment, is everyone on the list who hasn't financially partnered in any capacity, but you'd like to ask them to consider it. Even if you reached out before and they said no, it can be worth reaching out again if at least a year has passed. You know, a lot of times that we found that when people say no, what they really mean is no, not right now. Especially if you got to the stage where actually sitting down and chatting with them. So it's always worth following with people like that. So segment C is everyone on your list who hasn't partnered with you financially. And segment D covers the people who you aren't ready to ask, likely because you don't know who they are. If you've been part of speaking at churches and having people sign up for newsletter lists, maybe that you didn't know, you know, you're obviously not going to know them. So with this group, segment D, it's time to start building the relationship. Reach out to them. You could let them know you're visiting their area, and while you're there, you'd love to connect with each. You know, you can do that in person. If you're not able to do that in person, you can do it via video conference, just to get to know them better and share a personal update of what God is doing through the ministry.
The reason we suggest segmenting your newsletter list is because your communication needs to be tailored to each person. You know, with all of the segments, you want to start by sending an email or a physical letter, if you can do that, that reminds them of the needs of your area of service and the good work that God's doing there. You know, we're going to share an example letter with you after the webinar, so don't worry about that. With segment A, right, your current partners, you could say something like, hey, thank you so much for your partnership in bringing the hope of Christ to the lost in Guatemala. And I'd like for you to pray about increasing your partnership for the coming year, and also help us find new partners through your family, friends, and through your church. But with segment B, your past partners, you could say something like, thank you for your past partnership in bringing the hope of Christ to the lost in Europe. And I'd like for you to consider partnering again for this coming year. With segment C, people who haven't given in the past but might be interested in partnership now, you could say something like, thank you so much for your interest in what God's doing in Southeast Asia. I'd like for you to pray about becoming a part of the work in Asia through a prayer and financial partnership. With segment B, the people you need to strengthen a relationship with, you'll want to say something like, thank you for your interest in what God is doing in Los Angeles. I'd like to get together to give you a personal update on the ministry and spend some time getting to know you and your family. However, I do want to add that if you get connected with people from segment D and they bring up finances, go ahead and talk about it. They've opened the door to have that conversation. And it's likely because God's moving in them to consider partnership. So go ahead, share the information with them and ask if they'd be interested in considering a partnership. Don't be so focused on not talking about finances that you miss an opportunity to invite them to give when they're asking for that, right? A day or two after your letters arrive, you want to begin calling people, if at all possible, or at least emailing to see if they got the letter and if they're interested in meeting. Make sure you ask if they're interested, because they may not be interested, and that's okay. Be careful, though, not to assume and just say, when can you meet, without asking them if they're interested. An important part of this process is this follow-up. Ideally, you want to be following up with those you haven't heard from or who haven't made a firm decision every 3 days. It can be by phone, text, email, Facebook, any other messaging app. Cycle through the different options even, but be reaching out every 3 days to communicate the urgency of a response. Don't sit back and expect them to do the work for you.
Hey, Drew. I just want to kind of comment on something that you said, because it was really good,
Yeah.
about like making sure that they're interested. You know, when we work with folks, when we're coaching missionaries or fundraising professionals, when you ask somebody, a potential financial partner, if they're interested in meeting with you about the ministry or about a financial partnership, you're really asking their permission to ask. And you're also qualifying people in or out. You know, it's not really a great use of your time to meet with people who will tell you, I'm not really interested in the work that you're doing. And that's okay. But we need to spend our time with people who are interested in the work, because we're trying to gather those people together.
Yeah.
And that's probably the number one reason that when the people that we coach in fundraising, when they actually get to making an ask, about 90% of those people say yes. And it's because we do this qualification process. So I didn't want to kind of gloss over that, because I thought that was really good.
Yeah. I think it's honestly, for me, it's one of the most important parts of the process. Like when you're going from beginning to end through all the communication, the point when you ask them, hey, are you interested to talk about this, and to talk about partnership for that reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to shift into talking about churches. So I want to do a quick poll. All right, you guys should be seeing it now. Have you connected with pastors in the past? Or how have you connected with pastors in the past? You know, you have Facebook, email, phone, physical letter, in person. I want to see what you guys have used in the past to connect with pastors. Seeing a lot of emails coming in. I see a lot of in-persons. That's awesome.
Cool.
I'm going to leave it up for 10 more seconds.
10 seconds is like an eternity when there's silence.
It's so long, but that's okay.
Okay,
all
I feel
right.
like it's been 10 seconds.
It has been. It has been. All right, so the most option was...
Why don't you share it with everybody? There we go.
Yeah, emails. So 78% of you guys said email, and 73.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, percent. That's crazy. Yeah, it's awesome. So here's the thing. When you reach out to a church, you want to make it as personal as possible, because you're not the only missionary coming home. You want to start by finding out who's the best person to contact, and then, if at all possible, call them. I remember when I was doing fundraising, I was speaking I had spoken to over 40 different churches, and the best way was to just call them and just talk to them on the phone. It was really great. So you can call them on the phone. You can do this through Skype. You can do this through FaceTime. There's tons of other apps out there that allow you to do phone calls over the internet. Use those. Then follow up by emailing the pastor, letting them know you tried to call if you didn't get a hold of them, and that you'd like to visit the church this summer and share, and then share whatever your request is. So there are several things you might want to request, right? One, sharing with the church congregation during one or all of their services. You could request to put up a table with ministry info like brochures, prayer cards, newsletter sign-up list. You could also ask to be connected with groups like Sunday school classes, the prayer group, or their small groups. However, be aware that a lot of small groups like to take a break over the summer, so this might limit your options or make scheduling more difficult. But if the pastor is willing to connect you, having them send an email introducing you and the ministry, and then having you follow up right away is the best way to do that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
It really is.
You know, you can reach out directly, but that reference from the pastor goes a long way. You know, somebody that they know reaching out to them is huge. If you share with a small group, we recommend having a response card for each person to fill out. We'll share a PDF example and a follow-up email after this webinar for one of those. But this is a great thing to have at every seat. And you'll even see that it has an option for people to mark, I'm not interested at this time. The idea, right, is that you're getting a response from every person, and you know exactly what action to take in following up. You might want an opportunity to speak to the missions committee, right, about a new ongoing or increased financial partnership or their consideration in a one-time gift. And another thing you can ask is to be included on the prayer request. If they have a prayer group or a prayer chain, this is a great way to raise awareness around the ministry and its needs. And it also helps the church get connected. We wanted to open up some time to see if anybody had any questions about, either the segmenting or the churches. If you guys have any questions, we'll give you like a minute or two to ask those now.
We have one question that was asked a while ago, and Russell, it would be for you. It's from Jonathan, who asked, is the link to meet with Susie available for people that are already waitlisted for Tailored?
Yeah, if you're on our wait list, no, it's not for necessarily people who are currently in a coaching relationship, and that would kind of be currently coaching relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you have questions and you want to send me an email, I can maybe answer some questions over email if you have. It's just russell@tailoredfundraising.com.
Okay, great.
So that's a good question.
And then Amy asked, are you referring to churches that support you already? What about new churches? We are not on the field yet and looking to add new churches, but are struggling to make connections even with advocates.
Yeah, this is a great question. Just like we said, honestly, if you can get like the contact information for the person, like the pastor or the missions pastor, or the person that is going to be over that, I would recommend just giving them a call and introducing yourself and saying, hey, my name, this is our name, this is where we're at. And we have this opportunity to do this ministry, and, kind of share that a little brief summary and tell them, we would love to meet with you this next week or sometime to connect and tell you more about this and get to know you. And pastors, I had a lot of really great personal response to that. There's a lot of pastors that really loved meeting to hear about that. And sometimes, like you said, if you have an advocate, you can tell them, yeah, I'm a good friend of so-and-so. Or if you don't have an advocate in that church, sometimes it might be good to tell them like who your sending church is. Like sometimes I would say, I'm down here in Monticello and Pauline Missionary Baptist Church, they're my sending church. And because sometimes these churches, they know each other. And so it gives you a little bit of credibility. So you're not just like a random, smo guy, that Joe Blow that's coming. But that's one way, that's the biggest way that I would recommend reaching out to new churches.
Yeah. And, when you're looking at churches in that area, you might ask your pastor if they know other pastors in the area. And that's a great connection. I was also going to say that I think it is challenging to get into churches that you don't know. So we usually suggest that you connect with the 3 to 5 churches that you probably already have a relationship with. And then from there, reach out to individual families. So if you're feeling kind of stuck, I think I would definitely sign up for that free coaching session with Susie. I think another thing that might be especially when you're connecting with people that you don't know, I think talking about impact is pretty huge, or talking about the problem that we're solving together, because partnership is really about what we're accomplishing together, right? So if there's a really big need that we can solve together, I think people are more inclined to hear about what we can do about that. So either focusing on the need of the people, not your financial need, or not even your need to go, but the need of the people that you're going to be serving, because we're all going to be serving them together, or the impact that we can have together. So I would focus on those 2 things.
We've also got, sorry, go ahead, Drew.
I was just gonna say there's a lot of questions coming in, and we're gonna let Emily take care of some of those in the chat. And then if you want to, you can hold them. We're going to keep going just for the sake of time. And we're going to have a time at the end of the webinar where we're going to stay on the call and take care of as many questions as we can.
Cool. Thanks, Drew. And Emily, if you need to interrupt me, just interrupt. I suppose.
Done.
I don't mind being interrupted. At least not too much. Okay. So it's so important for us to begin setting up our fundraising plans now, because we all know, especially as missionaries, how crazy it can get once summer hits. And we also know how people are, how busy people are in the summer. So we really need to start creating our plans and arranging those meetings or our plans before we visit the different locations we're going to be at, visiting financial partners or meeting with potential financial partners. So if you haven't been taking notes so far, I would encourage you to begin right now, because what we're going to be doing is walking through the timeline of what you need to do when. So open up notes on your computer, phone, grab a pen and paper, however you like. The first thing is to think through is, how much are you wanting to raise? With the 4 to 8 to 12 weeks that you have in whatever location you're going to be in fundraising, how much are you wanting to raise in monthly partnerships or in one-time gifts? Let's figure that out. We're actually interested to know, how much in additional monthly partnerships do you want to raise from the group? I'm terribly interested to know kind of what the range is. So take a quick second, think about how much in additional monthly partnerships that you want to raise. Is it under 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 plus in monthly partnerships? I'll give you 10 seconds of dead silence to figure this out. I'm just kidding, not dead silence, because I hate that. Well, I mean, I don't hate that, but not on a webinar, because that's just weird. Okay, are we almost finished, Drew? Show us the results. Okay, so we have 43% of you between 1,000 and 2,000, and then 35% between 2,000 plus. So that's really, really interesting to know. A fun fact, we just did some calculations at Tailored, and we coach about 100 to 120 people at a time. They're either missionaries or fundraising professionals they're responsible for fundraising. And we found that on average, every person that we coach raises at about 10 times what they spend on a coach. So a lot of people, just in the first few months of working with a fundraising coach at Tailored, raising an additional 1,000 to 2,000, a lot of times more per month. So it'd be a great investment, if you're looking for some help and you feel stuck. So if you need to do more work on your budget before you know what that number is exactly, I highly recommend that you make time to do that this week. This is a very important goal to set, not just for you to know, but for you to share with partners and potential partners. So you could use this in a newsletter or email or in a personal meeting by saying, we're looking to raise an additional $1,000 in monthly partnerships this summer, so that, and then connect it to impact. And you might have goals in addition to a specific dollar amount, like 10 new financial partners, 30 new people on a newsletter list, 2 new church partners. They can be different things, but it needs to be clear and it needs to be connected to impact. The next several things to write down are specific dates. So start with the date that is 3 weeks before you arrive on a home assignment. I know that a lot of what this webinar is geared toward is specific to missionaries coming home, wherever home may be, on home assignment over the summer, if you're going back to where your base of financial partners are. So start with the date that is 3 weeks before you arrive. And this is when you need to begin calling or emailing people to set up meetings, okay? So it's super important you do that several weeks beforehand. I love this part, and you should love it too. And here's why. I love it because, you go on a home assignment, and it can be really stressful when you don't have a plan, but if you know beforehand the times that you won't be fundraising, it's just so much easier to relax in the times that you do have free, as opposed to always worrying, or if you're in the middle of, you're trying to set up meetings while you're actually there. It's just a lot more stressful. So I love this step. 3 weeks before you arrive, begin calling or emailing people to set up meetings. So the second date to write down is about 1 month before you arrive. So we're kind of working backwards. So first was 3 weeks before you arrive. The other one is 4 weeks before you arrive. This is when people need to receive either a personal letter or email from you asking, if they would be interested in meeting while you're in town to hear about the ministry and consider a partnership. I specifically like my method of this is to send a letter or an email or even a Facebook message, letting them know that you'll be giving them a call and why you're giving them a call, and that's to actually set up a time to meet. So now take note that this is when it needs to be in their hands or their inboxes. So just make sure you keep that in mind. So if you're actually mailing letters, which can be really personal, I know it's kind of old school, but it can be super personal, especially if you get a chance to, to sign them. Then write down the date that you need to get them in the mailbox. And remember, if, obviously you're not there. So someone local could print and mail these for you if you choose to go the direct mail route. You can find people who are willing to help in this way because a physical letter could make a really good impression. And there are also professional services that you can hire to print and mail for you, like prayerletters.com is one that we use or suggest our clients could check out. Okay, the next date that you need to write down is when you need to start working on this letter or email. I think this is important too. Some of us can sit down and send it in the same day, but most of us are going to take several days to complete it. Not all of us are, disciplined writers. So it can be, you can kind of get that writer's block going. So put a realistic date that allows you the time that you need to do it well and get it sent in time. And just take into account your schedule. If you know the week it needs to be sent out is a full week for you, then you may need to write it 2 or 3 weeks in advance. It's all about planning. And hopefully we're creating a checklist for you of what you need to do to actually prepare for this time. Okay, and there's one more thing that needs to happen before people receive this letter, and that's we like to send out a general newsletter. Some of you may have already done this, but it's important that you send out something that's kind of letting people know and expect that you're coming back. It's just a great way to create awareness, and so people aren't caught by surprise by this. Make sure you're expressing gratitude and that you want to continue connecting people to the impact this ministry is having. For example, you can say, "We are so thankful for your continued interest and partnership in sharing the hope of Christ with refugees in Greece, and we'd love to share more about that when we're home or when we're in your area." So what questions do we have about timeline and creating a good timeline for this?
We don't have any questions up there yet, but there's actually 2 from the churches that I wanted to have you guys answer live, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, that's great. Go for it.
Okay. So Zach asked, I have a person, it's not really a question, but you'll get it. I have a person who is on my support team who is 100% behind with what I'm doing. I'm speaking at their Sunday school in 2 weeks, and she is advocating for me. What are some tips to use to maximize this trip?
That's good. Drew, and even Emily, if you have some tips, that'd be perfectly fine too. I think one of the tips, there's a couple of tips I have. One is if your advocate can really set expectations of what, why am I inviting this person or this couple here? Is it to invite them to consider a financial partnership? If so, I think the advocate would be great to prepare that group and say, I'm really excited for this, for this person to be coming, and their ministry has made a huge impact on my life. And I have invited them here to actually invite you to consider giving. It's completely up to you, but that's why they're coming. I'm excited to give you this opportunity.
Yeah.
The second thing is to have a follow-up strategy. Don't just go and talk and expect things to happen. You need to have a strategy to follow up. It might be worth signing up for that free coaching session just to kind of talk through that specific instance. I think you can get a lot out of that, but I think follow-up has to do with, letting them know that you'd like to follow up with each person individually to see if it's something that they're interested in investing in. Make sure you have a way to do that, those kinds of things. So have a follow-up plan, because it's just not all going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that I think is really huge, and I'm not sure what level that person is advocating, but if you have somebody that's really, like you said, 100% behind them, even asking them to do the ask can be really big. Like asking them to, if you do part of the ask, walk them through how to invite, and then you ask them, like, would you be willing to ask them to partner with us at the end of like the time where you're sharing and stuff like that. I remember I went to a church one time, and the pastor, after I spoke and even invited him, the pastor stood up and was like, hey guys, I am partnering with him personally, and I would love to see you guys. If you guys will partner with him, I really want you to do that. And that kind of goes into that, setting those expectations, but just having them there, to having him stand up. Like I had tons of people that were really excited about partnering with him just because he was willing to do that,
Right.
And it was really, really great.
That's a great point, Drew. I think taking advocacy to the next level, for sure. What else do we have?
Mark and Pam asked, we're just now beginning to look at other like-minded churches not from our denomination. Can you address this?
Okay, well, that's a big topic. I think the first thing, and probably the most important thing, if you can, is people referring you. So, people making the connection for you. I love, it's always better when someone emails a pastor, copies you on the email, and says, hey, pastor so-and-so, I want to introduce you to Mark and Pam and their ministry, and here's what it does, and here's the impact it's having. I think that the people, you and the people of your congregation, could find this ministry a great partnership. And so I just wanted to connect the two of you and let them take it from there. So I would focus on that. I think that's usually your best bet when going to churches that you don't have a first degree connection with. And Mark and Pam, a great way that I've found to do that is actually create a template email for the people I'm asking to connect me with those pastors. So I might say, hey, John, I was wondering if you might be able to connect me to the pastor of your church because of XYZ, connecting that to impact. And I've written a potential email. You can just kind of fill in the blanks and you can personalize it, but I wanted to make it easy for you to connect me with them. So I find, a huge blocker is when people have to write that email because they don't know how to make a reference, or what to say in that. So if you just write it for them and here's an example of something you could use, I think that can go a long way. So that's the first thing I would do to approach that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else, Emily?
We've got a question from Bree that says, how much time before, there was a bit of a typo, so I'm piecing it together. How much time before sending the general I'm coming back home newsletter should I allow before steps 1 through 3? Bree, if that isn't quite what you meant, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of weeks would be perfectly fine. Yeah, I think that's plenty of time. Good question.
All right, so we're gonna keep moving on. We'll get to your questions. If we don't take care of them, Emily will take care of them in the chat. She's awesome, so yeah. All right. For those of you who have already thought through your newsletter list and know you're gonna have to make new connections, then the first place you'll want to start is with your current partners. Definitely reach out to all of them and ask if they can help connect you with people in their network who share a passion for God, missions, or the particular work you're a part of. You want them to get you connected to family, friends, any small groups they know of or are a part of, any churches that they know of or are a part of. Another person you can ask is your home pastor, your home church pastor. Are they a part of a pastor's group where they could introduce you to some other people? Are there other churches in the area that could recommend for you to reach out to, right? I mean, I can think back to some of my pastors. I mean, they would give me lists of 7, 8, 10 other pastors that they went to seminary with that are now pastors in the state that I lived in at other churches. And it was so huge and very helpful. And finally, if you do not know who else to ask, start cold calling. Let's go. Okay. There's likely several churches in the area you'll be visiting, and don't discount the small ones. They're small, but they're often mighty.
Yeah. So, Drew, I'm not opposed to cold calling. Obviously, we wouldn't be saying it in the webinar if we weren't. But we don't usually get to cold calling with the people that we coach, right?
I have before. I've
Okay.
worked on cold calling before.
Is it because their budget was so large?
Yeah. And they had such a small network, or usually like I had a client who had just moved. And so they had just moved like within the past month or two. So they didn't have like a very large local network. And so it was actually a CEO person. And she had a large person. She lived in the Bible Belt. And I tell everyone that lives in the Bible Belt, just start Googling churches, because you can throw a rock and hit like 5 different churches on one tree.
Right.
So why not start, reaching out to some of them and see who's willing to let you come meet with them and things like that.
You know what a great tool for that is LinkedIn, because it'll show you the degree of connection. So if you can, find a pastor of a church and look them up on LinkedIn, you might actually see there's somebody that y'all have in common that you know, and that can introduce you to. So it wouldn't be as cold. So.
And also too, when I was doing fundraising several years ago, I was in the Missionary Baptist denomination, and we had an association, and they actually had like a book with all the Missionary Baptist churches in each state. So your denomination might have something like that. Like there might be an association, and they might have like a book that has like all the contact and addresses and phone numbers of important people and things like that. And if you can get one of those, man, those things are like golden. Yeah,
that's huge. Actually, my denomination has one of those. All you have to do is call the denominational headquarters and ask them to mail you one or purchase one.
Yeah, and
so,
that's
really
what
good.
I had. That's why, like within 6 months, I spoke to like 40 churches, because I just started cold calling churches and was like, hey, started. Yeah, it was really helpful.
All right. So another concern that we hear from veteran missionaries is that they haven't kept in touch with their partners the way that they feel they should have. So while it's ideal that you've been reaching out about fundraising to a group of people who are already strongly connected, that may not be an option this time around because of the time crunch, and you haven't been communicating very well the past several months. But we can change that moving forward. So how often should your partners be hearing from you? Well, with a mass newsletter, monthly is a nice rhythm, but quarterly is also acceptable. The keys to a successful newsletter are that they're consistent and brief. Whether it's monthly or quarterly, make it happen every month or once or every quarter. If your newsletters are more than 2 pages long, or people have to scroll on their device more than twice, it's probably too long. And really the 2 pages is only if there are a lot of pictures or design work. If it's heavy on content, you really want to keep it to 1 page. With those guidelines, you may realize that you need to be sending a newsletter more often because there's so much happening and your newsletter is getting too long. So you can just basically send stuff more often. Whatever frequency you choose, even when you don't feel like there's much to communicate, you still need to send something. Share a story of impact, or make it all pictures with short captions. You can even share an impact story from one of your teammates. And remember, impact is the difference the gospel is making in people's lives in both big and small ways. There's so many people that we work with, they say, I really don't feel like there's a lot of impact in my ministry yet. But there is, because the gospel is holistic, and it makes a difference. Just sharing a promise from God's word with somebody, that's impact. It may be small, it may be even big. Or sitting and listening to, the circumstances of somebody else that you've met that's not a believer. That's showing Christ's love to that person, and that is impactful to them. So look for impact, not just on some grand scale, but look for impact the way that the gospel is influencing people and pointing people to Christ in both big and small ways. Another important piece about sending email newsletters is to not put it as an attachment. The average open rate from, let's say, MailChimp a MailChimp newsletter is 23%. So only 23% of the people open, but the click-through rate, meaning the percent of people who click on an attachment or a link in the email, is just 3%. So if you have 100 people on your newsletter list, you don't want just 3 people reading your newsletter. We can think of a lot of better ways to spend your time, but we do want as many people as possible reading it, right? In addition to that, however, you want to plan on staying connected personally with your partners, not just through mass communication like newsletters and social media. So this can look like sending a postcard or handwritten note, sending an email, Facebook message, video chat, pretty much anything from you that just says, hey, how's it going? You know, so often we feel like these times where we're talking to people, they're a little uncomfortable because they feel like you have to share something like really significant. Really, those times are really for you to get to know the people that are on your ministry team.
That's cool.
It's what you're accomplishing together, and you're actually on a team doing God's work together. You just want to know them. You want to know how you can pray for them. So don't feel the pressure to get on a call and share some amazing life-changing story. Don't hold it back if you have it, but you know, definitely just ask more questions than giving statements. It can be so powerful. With churches, we recommend asking them how often they'd like to hear from you, and the best way to share that information. So how do they like to be communicated with, and the best person to send it to. So who should we send it to? For your partners, we recommend connecting every 6 months. Just in general, if you have, you can make a more specific plan for your donors. But if you're not communicating anything personal, then we just recommend just try to contact everybody every 6 months. So if you see a financial partner this summer that on one-on-one, that counts as a connection. So you can reach out again 6 months later. If you meet a lot of people over the summer, you can't meet everybody 6 months later because that would be overwhelming. But let's say if you have 60 partners, then identify 10 a month that you can reach out to, and then schedule the time that you need to do that. I think it's really great to schedule 1 to 2 hours every week that you know that you'll have free, that you can kind of say, here's my checklist of things I need to do every week. An easy checklist that I like is one, just check your finances, check the donations that came in, and just make sure that you're tracking who's giving and who's not giving. Mm-hmm. The second thing that you could do in that 1 to 2 hours that you set aside is take notes on what happened the week beforehand so that you could share it in a newsletter or share it in a conversation. Something funny or powerful that happened with you, a story of a connection with, maybe if you're a teacher, maybe it's a student, maybe it's a story of impact that you saw, or something that really needs to be prayed over. But writing all these things down, this isn't everything you're going to put in your communication, but it gives you lots of choices of things to put in your communication without the pressure of having to sit down and write a newsletter. Just think about what God did last week, or what you need prayer for, or what stood out to you about last week's ministry.
Yeah, and I want to kind of add something right there, Russell, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
I see a lot of missionaries sending out newsletters that are like a novel. They're like 5 pages long. I have to scroll for days, Nobody wants to read that. Like, I would love to get
Tell us how you feel, Drew.
I don't want to read it. I won't read it. I'm not going to read it. I got other people, to read stuff. But what I would love is like a 2-paragraph story of something that happened last week. Something, no matter how big or small, because it's less about telling them everything that happened in a month and making them feel like they were there with you, in a story. And so it can be really, really powerful. And it doesn't even have to be long. It doesn't have to be a lot. And actually, it's preferred that it's not a lot. And that way, too, if you're not sending out a lot at once, you can send out more often, and it's less of a task. It's less work because it only takes you 15 to 20 minutes to put some content out or to connect. So
Cool. Good advice. Okay, so the third thing is check your partner list to see who's next in line to reach out to personally. And you don't have to necessarily focus on a specific number of people, like 10 a week. Just maybe you set aside an hour a week to do these things, and you just communicate with as many people that are next on your list as possible. So just kind of reflecting on what we've experienced today. Let's just take a second to reflect on what we experienced today and share in the chat. What is something in this webinar that has been helpful for you? So if you would share that in the chat and share it with all attendees and panelists so everyone can see it. But what is something in this webinar that has been helpful for you? Just share that with us. And Emily, if we have some questions or have any more questions that you want to share.
Oh, we got a ton coming in now. We got, let's see, Alex Chin said to develop advocates in order to expand your network. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty cool.
We help people create whole advocate strategies. So that'd be an interesting topic with Susie for sure. So strategies for reaching out to new people, mapping out a fundraising timeline. That's great. I love that. Segmenting, that's huge. I mean, segmenting can really change the way you fundraise. And timeline before visit and the definition of impact. Wow, thanks, Wendy. I'm glad that was meaningful for you. Man, so many others. So glad that we're kind of learning together on how to do this.
Brad A said, honestly, it's all been good, overwhelming, but good. And I think we would love for you to sign up for that free coaching, because that's the one thing that Susie's really great at, is unpacking a lot of like knowledge that you get and figuring out how to apply it and like implement it into your fundraising and what you're doing. Yeah,
and Drew, and if you have questions, just put them in the Q&A, and Emily, just interrupt me anytime. But I mentioned earlier that people who work with one of our coaches generally, on average, they raise more than 10 times what they spend with a coach. And so if you are going to have a focused time of fundraising, then I would really also encourage you to talk with Susie about working with a coach for the time that you're going to be fundraising in the summer. I'll let her share this with you, but we're putting together a special package of 6 coaching sessions over the time period that you are going to be fundraising over the summer. And it's customizable to the time that you're going to be actually fundraising. And we don't normally just do 6 sessions, but I thought it would be really great for people on this webinar who are really focusing over the summer to fundraise, having those 6 sessions with a coach. So definitely talk with Susie about that if you're interested.
Yeah,
it can be really great.
Maya said that Susie is amazing, helped us a ton in December. I love that. I love Susie. She is amazing.
She is amazing.
Yeah.
We've got a question here from Nate, who wants to know, how do I get contacts to identify donors with deeper pockets who can help with bigger projects? How do I bridge this conversation in a way that doesn't seem too focused on money?
I love that question.
Yeah, it's a good one.
What's the name of the person who asked it?
Nate.
Okay, this is great. I think that I can't remember which book we covered it in. It's either more.tailoredfundraising.com or generous.tailoredfundraising.com.
I think it's generous.
In there. Is it? Okay. So the reason why people are going to connect you to others who have higher capacity isn't just because you need money. It's because that funding is the only thing holding you back from impact. And you have to identify what that impact is. And we're going to actually be putting an ebook out about this very topic in the next couple of months. I've met with Kylie, the other co-founder today, about this topic. But it's about creating opportunities for people. For example, so as a missionary, your budget is, $60,000 a year. Somebody is probably not going to give $20,000 to your budget, because most major donors are going to probably not give more than 10%. Some give more, some give less, but on general they give about 10% is going to be the kind of the high. But if they have the capacity to give, $70,000, we need to create opportunities for them to do that. And we do that through impact, and just, I would say, potentially like finding a project that you're involved in that that those funds could be distributed between your support account as well as the project, because you're actually working on that project. Things like that could be really huge. You just need to create a scenario that makes it urgent for that person to give that size gift. So I know that's kind of a little vague, but it really is all about creating those opportunities for impact, not just more funding. And that advocate that you're talking about will want to connect you to that person when they know what that giving will do. A donor is always asking, how will my giving actually make a difference? And that's what we as leaders are responsible for answering.
Thanks, Russell. Drew, do you want to add anything to that?
No, but I am curious. I have a question of my own for a lot of the attendees. I'd love to hear from those who are in coaching or have done coaching before. I'd love for you guys to throw in the chat what you have loved about coaching and how it specifically helped you when you were going through it or when you're in it now. So I would love to see that in the chat.
Emily, could you also throw up Susie's link in the chat again, because it's kind of way back there?
Yeah, I will.
Cool.
While I'm doing that, I want to ask a question from Lisa. She says, regarding segmenting, is it important to look at who is reading versus receiving your newsletter and including that as another layer of your segmentation?
I mean, you can totally do that. I think it'd be helpful. There's another app that I like to use, and it's called If No Reply. And basically it's a Google Chrome extension. So you have to use Google Chrome as your browser, and it's a Gmail extension. So if you're a Gmail user, it works really great. I don't know if it works with other platforms. But basically, If No Reply, you can send out mass emails that are personalized. Like you can mail merge their names and even other specific information in there, and it actually delivers through your Gmail account. And so it gets to their inbox or to their primary account, their primary tab in Gmail. And actually the open rate on using that app, ifnoreply.com, is about like 80%, as opposed to MailChimp, which is 20%. Using If No Reply is about sending something that looks like a very personal email. So it's not your newsletter. But if you want to be communicating with people who aren't opening your newsletter, maybe because it just goes to a folder that they don't check very often, I think If No Reply could be something that you could alternate with. Maybe send a paragraph email update every other month or so, and that people who aren't reading that MailChimp newsletter, they are probably almost definitely going to be reading what came through the If No Reply app. So I'll put it in the chat here. So anything else? We're almost at 3 o'clock. Emily, do we have any other questions?
We don't have any questions right now.
All right. Well, guys, this has been really helpful just to get your feedback on all this, and I hope it's been helpful to you as we presented this information. Oh, sorry, I did what I told you not to do. Here, I'm putting it in noreply.com. There, now it went to everybody. So I'll be sending out an email to everybody who attended with the webinar notes and that template letter. So don't forget to sign up for that 30-minute call with Susie. Okay. Again, she freed up her schedule tomorrow, and I know she has some time next week. So go ahead and hit that. So thanks everyone for being on here, and we love you guys, and blessings on your ministries. We'll talk to you later.